There is a moment every morning, a fraction of a second before conscious thought arrives, when the body moves first. Before you check your phone, before you remember what day it is, before you recall the name of the problem you fell asleep worrying about, the body has already run its opening sequence. It has already checked the chemical inventory from the night before, assessed the cortisol reserves, primed the threat detection circuits, and delivered its first verdict about the day. And the verdict, if you are like most people operating from an unexamined internal program, is this: today will be like yesterday. The danger is still there. The scarcity is still real. The gap between who you are and who you need to be remains unbridged. Brace accordingly. This is not a metaphor. This is not spiritual language dressed as science. This is the literal neurobiological reality of a nervous system that has been trained, through years of repeated emotional experience, to anticipate the same future it has always known. The body is not broken. It is extraordinarily competent. The problem is that it is competent at running the wrong program. We have spent 3 phases of this series dismantling the illusions that keep people small. We decoded the gap between effort and transformation. We confronted the invisible loyalties to family patterns of scarcity. We faced the fragmented mind that starts everything and finishes nothing. And then, in the last episode, we closed the loop. We became people who complete what they begin. We thought the work was cognitive. We thought it was about beliefs and decisions and willpower and practice. And it is. But there is a deeper layer, a layer that most personal development content never reaches because it is inconvenient, because it requires more than journaling and intention setting, because it demands that you confront something that does not speak in words. The body is not listening to your goals. The body is running a script. Joe Dispenza leans forward in his seat inside the carriage, elbows resting on his knees, and the geometry of his posture already communicates that what he is about to say will not be comfortable. He has spent decades researching what happens when people try to change without addressing the biological substrate of their habits, the literal chemistry of their emotional addiction, and the data is not flattering to the motivational poster industry. He says that most people wake up in the morning and immediately begin thinking the same thoughts they thought yesterday, which trigger the same feelings they felt yesterday, which cause them to take the same actions they took yesterday, which produce the same results they have always produced, and then they conclude that their life is not changing. Of course it is not changing. The change was never the problem. The script was. Alan Watts is watching the landscape move past the window of the carriage with the relaxed attention of someone who has long since stopped fighting the terrain. He does not disagree with Dispenza's clinical precision. He finds it beautiful, actually. The way the body's stubbornness illuminates something ancient about the nature of the game of life. He says, with characteristic lightness, that human beings are the only creatures in the known universe who are embarrassed by their own programming. Every other organism runs its script without shame. The salmon does not feel guilty for swimming upstream. The hawk does not apologize for hunting. Only humans sit in the carriage of their own existence and argue with the engineer about the destination, all while being completely unaware that they themselves laid the tracks years ago. Jordan Peterson does not find this amusing. He finds it important, and there is a difference. He says that the discovery that you are running a script is not an invitation to compassion. It is an indictment of unconsciousness. If you have reached adulthood and you are still allowing the nervous system patterns of a frightened child to determine the shape of your professional life, your financial ceiling, your relational patterns, if you are a biological slave to the chemistry of your own unexamined past, then what exactly are you taking responsibility for? The carriage is in motion. The question is whether you are the passenger, the conductor, or the track itself. Carl Jung sits in the corner of the carriage with the contained stillness of a man who has made peace with the depth of the basement. He has been listening. He always listens first. And what he hears in this conversation is not a debate between science and philosophy. He hears a precise description of the shadow, finally rendered in the language of the body. The script, he says, is not random. It was not written by accident. The shadow, the accumulated repository of everything you have denied, suppressed, projected, and refused to integrate, does not announce itself. It does not come through the front door of conscious intention. It comes through the back door of the body. It becomes the tightness in the chest when a new financial opportunity appears. It becomes the sudden fatigue when a relationship starts to go well. It becomes the quiet sabotage of every plan that would require you to become someone the shadow has not yet authorized you to be. The only way out is inward. Carl Rogers does not rush to intervene. He holds the space. He understands that none of this changes until the person in the carriage first acknowledges the system they are actually in. Not the system they wish they were in, not the system they believe they should be in by now, but the actual operating reality of their lived nervous system, with all of its reactions and resistances and chemical loyalties. You cannot rewire what you have not yet seen. You cannot transform what you have not yet accepted as real. This is not passive resignation. It is the most radical act available to a human being, to see clearly, without flinching, the program that has been running in the background. And Helio Couto, who understands frequency the way a luthier understands the resonance of wood, says simply that the script is a vibration before it is a behavior. That what the body runs in the morning is not just a set of thoughts or emotions. It is an electromagnetic frequency that determines which possibilities can enter your field and which cannot. The prosperity wave does not fail to arrive because the universe is withholding. It fails to arrive because the biological frequency you are broadcasting is a frequency that prosperity does not recognize. You are transmitting static on the channel of abundance and then wondering why the signal is unclear. This is the diagnosis. This is what Phase 4 of this series exists to name, to examine with precision, and ultimately to give you the tools to rewrite. The body has staged a coup. The nervous system has taken over the government of your life. And unlike a political coup, this one did not happen through violence. It happened through repetition, through the slow, patient accumulation of emotional experience that eventually became cellular memory. The body learned that stress was the price of survival. It learned that anxiety was the appropriate response to uncertainty. It learned that the moment things begin to go well is precisely the moment to brace for the fall. And it learned all of this before you were old enough to have any say in the curriculum. 3 stories will anchor this. Not parables, real patterns, documented across hundreds of case studies that reveal the invisible shape of the script. The first is Marcus, a financial consultant in Chicago who had built a practice over 11 years that was, by any external measure, a success. He managed portfolios for upper-middle-class clients, lived in a well-appointed apartment on the north side of the city, drove the right car, wore the right watches, and every year, without exception, his income would rise to a certain point. A point that varied slightly with market conditions but held with uncanny consistency, and then stop. He would lose a major client. An unexpected expense would arrive. A deal he had been cultivating for months would collapse in the final week. His colleagues noticed, his wife noticed, his therapist noticed. Marcus noticed too, and he was not unintelligent. He had read the books. He had done the visualizations. He understood conceptually that something in him was engineering these ceilings. But understanding did not help, because the script was not running in his mind. It was running in his body. And in his body, a specific truth had been laid down by his father, a man who had worked in the steel industry in Pittsburgh and who had spoken, with great emotional conviction, about the danger of thinking you were better than where you came from. Marcus's body had inherited that conviction, not as a belief he could examine, as a frequency he could not escape. Every time his income approached the level where he would clearly, undeniably be better than where he had come from, the body ran its emergency protocol, the script executed. The ceiling held. The second story is Elena, a venture-backed entrepreneur in Austin who was brilliant and exhausted in equal measure. She had founded a software company that, in its 3rd year, was generating genuine momentum. Enterprise clients, a small but effective team, a runway that should have felt stable. Should have. Instead, Elena woke up every morning at 4 in the morning with her heart already racing. She was in perpetual crisis management mode even when there was no crisis to manage. She would manufacture urgency where none existed, create problems that needed solving, keep herself and her team in a state of low-grade emergency that was, on the surface, framed as high standards and drive. What no one saw, what Elena herself could not see, was that her nervous system required the stress. She had grown up in a household where love was conditional on performance under pressure, where the family was only truly together, only truly connected, during crises. Her body had learned, at a cellular level, that stress was not the obstacle to belonging, it was the price of it. She did not know how to exist in calm. Calm felt like absence, felt like abandonment. So she manufactured emergencies to maintain the chemistry of home. And her company was paying the operational and human cost of her body's unresolved script. The third is David, a real estate developer in Miami who had a gift for finding undervalued properties and a pattern, invisible to everyone including himself, of sabotaging deals at the moment of maximum profit. He would negotiate brilliantly, structure deals with precision, build genuine value, and then, at the closing table, find a reason to renegotiate, to delay, to add complexity that had not previously existed. He genuinely believed he was being thorough. His body was doing something else entirely. David's mother had worked 2 jobs for most of his childhood. The family's financial narrative was one of labor, sacrifice, and the moral dignity of not having too much. Having too much was associated, at the level of childhood memory, with betrayal, with forgetting where you came from, with becoming the kind of person who looked down. David's script ran a protection protocol every time a deal was about to produce. What his nervous system categorized as too much, the sabotage was not laziness. It was loyalty. It was love, expressed as self-limitation. 3 different people, 3 different professions, 3 different cities, 1 script. The body executing inherited programming with ruthless efficiency, long after the original context that produced that programming had ceased to exist. If this diagnosis of the internal script resonated with something you feel but have not yet been able to name, hit the like button now. It tells the algorithm this content is for genuine seekers, not passive consumers. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We are climbing the evolutionary steps that this series has been building since Phase 1. And you do not want your biology to miss the next level update in Phase 4. The script does not announce its presence. That is the essential fact that makes it so durable. It does not arrive with a notification. It does not send an email. It does not stand in the middle of the room and declare itself as the operating system that has been quietly administering your decisions, your relationships, your financial ceiling, and your physical health for as long as you can remember. It arrives as your life. It arrives as the feeling that things are just the way they are. It arrives as the familiar weight of a Tuesday morning, the predictable shape of your anxiety, the unsurprising outcome of the thing you tried again and which ended, again, in the same way. DIspenza has a phrase for this that is clinical in its precision. The body has become the mind, not metaphorically, literally, through the mechanism of the conditioned emotional response. The body has accumulated such a deep inventory of repeated emotional states that it no longer requires a conscious trigger to produce them. The mere fact of waking up activates the chemistry. The chemistry produces the thought. The thought confirms the chemistry. And the cycle closes before breakfast. He is describing what happens in the neural architecture of the prefrontal cortex when it is repeatedly overridden by the limbic system's threat assessments. The rational, visionary, future-oriented part of the brain, the part that can hold a 10-year goal and work backward from it, is regularly hijacked by the survival brain's insistence that the immediate emotional landscape is the only real landscape. The future does not feel real to the body. The past, specifically, the emotional residue of the past, feels very real indeed. So the body votes for the past in every moment of uncertainty, and uncertainty is, of course, the precondition for any meaningful change. Jordan Peterson is not interested in softening this. He sits with the particular intensity of a man who believes that precision is a form of respect, that telling people comfortable half-truths about their condition is a deeper cruelty than the discomfort of accuracy. He says that the modern mythology of the self as victim of its conditioning is one of the most dangerous narratives in circulation. Not because conditioning is not real, it is devastatingly real, but because the narrative of victimhood forecloses the only exit available. You cannot be both the prisoner and the key. The moment you fully locate the cause of your limitation outside yourself, in your childhood, in your parents, in the economic system, in your neurochemistry, you have, in the same gesture, relinquished your capacity to change it. The script is real. The script is powerful, and you are still responsible for whether it continues to run. Jung nods without speaking. He has watched, across decades of clinical practice, the way individuals use the genuine reality of their trauma as a permanent residence permit in the land of limitation. The shadow is not responsible for the script. You are responsible for the shadow. Not for having it, no one chooses what gets suppressed, but for the continued choice, made implicitly in every unexamined day, to leave it in the basement and wonder why the house smells wrong. Alan Watts observes, with gentle mischief, that the interesting thing about the script is how seriously everyone takes it. The body runs its program with the earnestness of a Shakespearean actor who has forgotten he is on a stage. The poverty script is delivered with the conviction of a man who has confused his role for his identity. The scarcity narrative is recited with the sincerity of someone who believes the theater is the world. What would happen, he wonders aloud, if for one moment you allowed yourself to see the performance from the outside? Not to dismiss it. The performance is real, the emotions are real, the chemistry is real. But to recognize that the one watching the performance is not the same as the one running the script. This is the gap that practice is designed to create. Not the elimination of the script that is not available in a single morning of meditation, but the creation of distance between the observer and the program. The first step is not change. The first step is recognition. Consider what the script looks like in its daily manifestations across professional life in America. The Wall Street analyst who has run a technically brilliant career for 14 years but who experiences, every time he approaches a certain compensation tier, a sudden and inexplicable desire to self-destruct professionally. The offhand comment to a senior partner, the uncharacteristic error in a high-stakes presentation, the bizarre decision to leave a position at precisely the moment it was about to compound. He has never connected these episodes. To him, they are unrelated bad luck. They are not. They are the script executing its sealing protocol. The suburban mother in Connecticut who has spent years building a small online business that has genuine traction, real customers, real revenue, real possibility of scaling, but who, every time the business begins to move towards something that would require her to identify publicly as a successful entrepreneur, floods herself with doubt and retreats into small. Not because she lacks capability, because success. In the script she inherited from a household where her mother martyred herself at the altar of domestic sacrifice, is coded as abandonment. Becoming visible, becoming thriving, becoming someone who is clearly winning in public. Her body reads this as betrayal of the woman who gave everything. So the body protects the loyalty. The business stays small. The script holds. The manager in a tech company in Austin who is universally regarded as the most capable person in the building, who has been passed over for senior leadership 3 times, who tells himself and everyone else that the promotion politics are unfair, the system is rigged, the decision makers are blind, all of which may be partially true, but who has never examined why, in every critical meeting, where his visibility would increase, he becomes suddenly, uncharacteristically deferential, why his voice drops. Why his posture changes. Why the man who in private conversation commands the room becomes, in front of power, oddly small. The script was written by a father who taught him, through example rather than instruction, that ambition was dangerous, that being seen wanting too much was shameful, that the appropriate relationship with authority was diminished presence, the body remembered. Carl Rogers says that none of this changes through confrontation. It changes through recognition followed by acceptance. Not acceptance as passivity, acceptance as the only honest starting point for genuine movement. If you spend your energy fighting the script before you have truly seen it, you will fight yourself into exhaustion without ever addressing the actual mechanism. The script must first be named. The body must first be acknowledged as the author it has always been. And that acknowledgement must be made without the additional script of self-judgment, the overlay of shame that says I should have known this sooner or I am broken for having operated this way. That judgment is just another layer of the script. The simple exercise for this chapter is called the foreign observer. For 3 consecutive days, you will spend 5 minutes each morning. Before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone, before you do anything oriented toward the world outside, sitting with a single question. The question is this: if a scientist from another culture, someone who had never been socialized in your particular family narrative, your economic background, your emotional inheritance, if that scientist were watching your body's first hour of the day as a behavioral phenomenon, what script would they conclude you were running? You are not analyzing yourself. You are not journaling extensively. You are adopting, for 5 minutes, the perspective of a compassionate foreign observer who is simply naming what they see. What does the body do when it wakes up? What does it anticipate? What chemistry does it immediately produce? What is the first story the nervous system tells about today? Write one sentence, just one, that names the script the foreign observer would identify. No judgment, no action plan, just the name. 3 days. 1 sentence per morning. The goal is not transformation. The goal is recognition. You cannot rewrite what you cannot first read. Let us be precise about the mechanism, because precision is respect. And what the body has done to most adults deserves to be understood with the same rigor we would bring to any other complex system that has gone off specification. The central claim of this chapter is not metaphorical. It is not an approximation of the truth dressed in scientific language. It is the actual operational reality, documented across decades of neuroscience and psychophysiology research. Emotions are chemically addictive, and the body will manufacture the circumstances necessary to maintain its preferred emotional state with the same ruthless efficiency that drives any other addiction. Joe Dispenza begins here because this is his territory, and he occupies it with the authority of someone who has spent years in the laboratory of human transformation, watching what actually happens when people attempt to change without addressing the biochemical substrate of their emotional habits. He explains the mechanism with the patience of a man who knows that most people will resist what they are about to hear. The process begins in the brain, specifically in the hypothalamus, a small but extraordinarily powerful structure that functions as the body's chemical government. The hypothalamus manufactures neuropeptides, small protein molecules that carry emotional information from the brain to the cells throughout the body. Every emotion you experience, fear, excitement, shame, joy, anxiety, love, resentment, has a corresponding neuropeptide signature. When you experience an emotion, the hypothalamus produces the matching neuropeptide, releases it into the bloodstream, and it travels to cells throughout the body, docking at receptor sites on the cell membrane like a key in a lock. This is where the addiction begins. The cells of the body are not passive recipients. Over time, through repeated emotional experience, the cells actually modify themselves. They grow more receptor sites for the neuropeptides that arrive most frequently. A body that has spent years in chronic stress grows more cortisol receptors. A nervous system that has spent years in low-grade anxiety develops a cellular architecture optimized for anxious chemistry. The body literally reshapes itself around the emotional diet it has been fed. And here is the critical mechanism of the addiction. When the cell becomes accustomed to a certain level of a particular neuropeptide, it begins to require that level to function within its normal range. When the emotional chemistry drops below the accustomed level, when the cortisol decreases, when the stress hormones diminish, when the anxiety chemistry subsides, the cell sends a signal up the chain, restock. And that signal is experienced in consciousness as an emotion, as a craving, as an inexplicable restlessness in the absence of a problem, as a subtle but insistent need to find something to worry about, as the uncanny ability to locate the one dark cloud in a clear sky. The body is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what an addicted system does. It is engineering the circumstances required to maintain its chemical baseline. The entrepreneur who manufactures crises when things go too smoothly, the analyst who self-destructs at the ceiling, the suburban mother who retreats into self-doubt when visibility approaches. These are not character flaws. These are not failures of willpower or motivation. These are the body's supply chain management system, efficiently sourcing the chemistry it has been trained to require. Jordan Peterson cuts through any temptation toward self-pity that might accompany this realization with characteristic directness. The fact that addiction is biological does not make it any less your responsibility. We extend this courtesy to heroin addicts. We recognize the neurobiological reality of their condition. And in the same gesture, we insist that recovery requires the one thing that biology alone cannot provide: choice. Informed, difficult, daily, repeated choice. The diagnosis of emotional addiction is not an absolution. It is a map. What you do with the map is still entirely your decision. The stress addiction deserves particular attention because it is the most prevalent form in contemporary American professional culture and the one most thoroughly disguised as virtue. The person who is chronically stressed, who operates perpetually at the edge of overwhelm, who seems constitutionally incapable of rest. This person is celebrated in the dominant cultural narrative as driven, ambitious, committed, high-performing. They are not. They are chemically dependent on the cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine cocktail that chronic stress produces. They have built a professional identity around the maintenance of their addiction. And the most insidious element of this particular script is that it is socially rewarded, which means the addiction never has to hide. It gets promotions. It gets LinkedIn endorsements. It gets interviewed on podcasts about productivity. The cortisol addiction operates through a mechanism that is particularly relevant to the question of financial limitation. Cortisol, in its acute form, is a survival molecule. It narrows attention, sharpens immediate threat response, prepares the body for rapid physical action. This is adaptive in a genuinely dangerous environment. But chronic cortisol elevation does something else. It suppresses the prefrontal cortex, the seat of long-term thinking, complex planning, creative problem-solving, and future orientation. The chronically stressed brain is literally neurologically incapable of accessing the cognitive architecture required for strategic vision, because the survival brain has taken the controls and locked the door. This explains something that Marcus, Elena, and David all experienced, but none of them could articulate. The strange clarity that would appear briefly when the pressure momentarily lifted. Vacations, Sunday mornings, the occasional hour of unusual quiet, and the even stranger phenomenon of how quickly they would find ways to restore the pressure before that clarity could become actionable. The body was protecting its chemistry. Calm was not safe. Calm was withdrawal. Alan Watts notes, with some delight, that this is the comedy and the tragedy of the human situation simultaneously. The organism most capable of imagining a different life is also the organism most thoroughly dedicated to preventing itself from living it. The gap between the map of the possible and the chemistry of the familiar is the existential comedy that every spiritual tradition has been attempting to address since the beginning of recorded wisdom. Different languages, same joke. Jung adds the dimension that connects the biochemical reality to the deeper psychological structure. The emotional addiction is not random. It is organized around the script, and the script is the shadow's architecture, the specific chemistry you are addicted to. Whether it is the cortisol of chronic stress, the shame chemistry of perpetual inadequacy, the grief chemistry of unprocessed loss, is not accidental. It corresponds with precision to the emotional content of the shadow's dominant narrative about who you are and what you deserve. The body is running the shadow's program at the cellular level. This is what Jung meant by fate as character, not destiny in the metaphysical sense. Character as the accumulated patterns of the psyche, expressed through the body, producing a life that looks like external circumstance but is actually internal choreography. Helio Couto speaks in frequencies. He says that the biological addiction is simultaneously an electromagnetic signature, and that frequency is what determines the collapse of possibility into experience. The quantum field does not respond to your intentions. It responds to your dominant vibrational state. And your dominant vibrational state is not what you feel when you are meditating or journaling or consciously aligning. It is what the body runs automatically, in the background, before and after your practices. The stress addiction does not pause during your morning gratitude ritual. It resumes the moment you stand up. And it is the background frequency, not the conscious practice, that the field is reading. Carl Rogers returns to the ground of acceptance, not as a retreat from the precision of the previous analysis, but as its necessary complement. You have now seen the mechanism. You understand, with genuine clarity, why your previous visualizations failed while your body was chemically committed to a different frequency. The question is not whether this is true. The question is whether you can hold this truth without the additional layer of self-judgment that would simply add shame to the existing chemical inventory. Shame is, after all, just another emotion. And your body may have receptor sites for that too. If you are realizing in this moment why your previous visualizations failed while your body was addicted to stress, if you are seeing for the first time the full architecture of the script that has been running your life, leave a comment below with the word programmer. By naming your intention with precision, you begin the process of collapsing a new wave function into form. Ensure you have watched the previous episodes in this series so that the foundations of phases 1, 2, and 3 carry the structural weight of what we are now building together in phase 4. The debate that happens in the 4th chapter of the carriage is the one the other passengers have been anticipating since the journey began. It is the debate between the depth of the psychologist and the urgency of the philosopher, between the compassion of the observer and the demand of the provocateur. Between Carl Jung and Jordan Peterson, there is not agreement. There is productive tension, the kind that produces light rather than heat, the kind that is more useful than comfort. Jung opens. He says that the tyranny of the body, the script as fate, the nervous system as destiny, must first be understood as purposive before it can be addressed as pathological. The script did not emerge from nowhere. It was constructed by an intelligence, not a conscious intelligence, but the deep adaptive intelligence of the psyche, in response to genuine need. Every emotional addiction, every ceiling, every pattern of self-sabotage that the body executes with such mechanical efficiency was originally a solution. The child who learned to become invisible in a household where visibility meant danger was not doing something wrong. The adolescent who learned that success provoked punishment was not being irrational. The young professional who learned to associate abundance with betrayal was not confused. They were paying attention to the evidence available to them at the time. The shadow is the repository of these solutions. It holds everything the psyche decided was too dangerous to integrate consciously. The ambition that was punished, the desire that was shamed, the confidence that was mocked, the joy that was interrupted by crisis often enough that the nervous system began to preemptively dampen it. The script runs these suppressions at the level of the body because the body does not forget. The body is the keeper of every experience the conscious mind could not process and file appropriately. And the script is the body's way of protecting the psyche from the experiences it concluded were too dangerous to have. This is Jung's essential insight, and it must be held alongside everything else. The script is an act of love. Distorted, outdated, operationally catastrophic for the adult it was designed to protect, but structurally an act of love. The only way out is inward, not because inward is comfortable, but because the script cannot be dissolved from the outside. You cannot outrun it. You cannot override it with positive affirmations delivered to the surface of a psyche whose basement is still running the original program. You must go in. You must find what the script is protecting. And you must offer that protected thing a different kind of safety. Not the safety of suppression, but the safety of integration. Peterson responds with respect for the analysis and impatience with what he sees as its potential misuse. He agrees that the script was purposive. He agrees that the shadow is the residue of genuine need. And he insists, with the urgency of a man who has watched too many people use their genuine wounds as permanent justifications for permanent limitation, that the question of origin is completely separate from the question of responsibility. The snake that bit you did not ask for your forgiveness in order for the antidote to work. Understanding why the script was written is useful. Remaining in the story of why it was written, year after year, as the mechanism for avoiding the terrifying and necessary work of rewriting it. That is the trap. That is the use of depth as escape. The carriage holds this tension without resolving it, because the tension itself is the truth. Both positions are correct. The script requires compassionate understanding and it requires courageous intervention. The body's tyranny must be met with the warmth of a witness and the demand of a builder. These are not contradictory impulses. They are the two hands required to do the work. Consider what the body's tyranny looks like in the specific domain of identity. The script does not only limit what you do, it limits who you can be. And this is where its power is most total and most invisible. You can change your job. You can change your city. You can change your partner, your diet, your morning routine, your spiritual practice, your social circle. And if the script remains intact, the new container will eventually be shaped by the old program. The body will find its familiar chemistry in the new circumstances. The ceiling will reinstall. The patterns will reappear wearing different costumes. This is the experience that drives people to despair after genuine effort. The terrible recognition that having done everything they were told to do, having been as committed and disciplined and open as they knew how to be, the fundamental shape of their life has not changed. What they encountered was not the ceiling of human potential. They encountered the ceiling of the unaddressed script. They hit the biological floor of an unexamined nervous system. And they concluded from this encounter that change is not possible. When what was actually demonstrated is that surface-level change cannot survive the body's gravitational pull toward its established baseline, Watts invites a reframe. He says that the body's tyranny is only tyranny if you believe you are separate from it. If you are the nervous system, then the script is you and the conversation changes. It is no longer a war between your better self and your biological programming. It is a recognition that the whole system is you, all the way down, including the parts that are running programs you did not consciously choose. The liberation available in that recognition is not the liberation of freedom from biology. It is the liberation of ownership of the entire instrument. You are not fighting your nervous system. You are learning to play it. Rogers closes the chapter in the place he always occupies, the unconditional ground. He says that the prerequisite for rewriting any script is the capacity to accept the person who has been running it, not to approve of the outcomes, not to endorse the limitations, but to extend to yourself the same quality of presence that would allow a client in genuine pain to finally stop defending their wound long enough to actually look at it. Self-acceptance is not the consolation prize for people who could not change. It is the precondition for change at the level where the script was actually written, which is not the level of goals or intentions or practices, but the level of the fundamental felt sense of what it means to be safe enough to become something new. Everything in this series has been building to practice. The map is not the territory. The understanding is not the transformation. The recognition of the script is necessary but not sufficient. What is required now is a protocol that operates at the level where the script actually lives, not in the conscious mind, not in the layer of beliefs and intentions, but in the body, in the nervous system, in the cellular chemistry of emotional habit. The killer exercise for this chapter is called somatic pattern interruption. It is a 3-day protocol designed to be executed with consistency rather than perfection. You will do this in the morning, before the day's script has time to fully install itself. It requires 7 to 10 minutes. It does not require equipment, a special environment, or any prior experience with somatic practice. What it requires is the willingness to interrupt, just interrupt, not yet transform, the body's automatic opening sequence. Day 1 is the interruption. Set an alarm for 5 minutes earlier than your normal wake time. When the alarm sounds, do not reach for your phone, do not speak. Do not stand up immediately. Sit upright in your bed or on the floor, spine straight but not rigid, and place both hands flat on your lower abdomen. Breathe into that space, not a forced breath, a directed breath, and feel whatever the body is already running. Do not analyze it. Do not name it immediately. Simply feel the quality of the chemistry that is already present, the tension, the anticipation, the weight, the readiness. Whatever texture the body arrived with. After 2 minutes of pure feeling, ask the body one question, silently. What script are you about to run today? Do not expect an answer in words. The body answers in sensations. Feel what shifts when the question lands. Then spend more minutes breathing slowly and doing nothing else. You have interrupted the automatic sequence. That is the entire goal of day 1. Day 2 is the recognition. Same structure, sit, hands on abdomen. Arrive in the body before the day arrives in you. This time, after 2 minutes of presence, bring to mind one situation from the recent past where the script ran clearly. One moment where the pattern executed and you can now identify it as script rather than circumstance. Feel in the body where that pattern lives, not where you think about it, where you feel it. The chest, the jaw, the stomach, the shoulders. Locate the physical geography of that script. Spend 3 minutes breathing slowly into that location, not forcing anything out, not trying to release or transform, simply directing attention and oxygen to the place in the body where the script resides. You are learning to read the body's map of your programming. That is day 2. Day 3 is the interruption in motion. You will carry this practice into the first waking hour of the day. Every time you notice the body beginning to execute its habitual sequence, the morning anxiety, the scanning for problems, the tightening in anticipation of the familiar difficulty, you will pause. Place one hand on the location you identified on day 2. Breathe 3 slow breaths directly into that location and ask the body the same question. Is this now or is this memory? Not to eliminate the sensation, not to convince yourself out of it, simply to create the 2 millimeters of space between stimulus and response that is the beginning of a rewritten script. Is this now or is this memory? The body will not always answer clearly, but the question itself is the interruption. The question is the beginning of new code. The mantra for this phase is not a positive affirmation. It is a declaration of authorship. It is spoken once in the morning, once at the midpoint of the day, and once before sleep. It is spoken aloud, not thought silently, because the body learns through vibration and not only through cognition. The mantra is this: I am the observer and the architect. My body carries the memory, and my awareness writes what comes next. The script was written for survival. I am writing for life. DIspenza says that the window between the automatic and the chosen is initially very small. For most people, the script runs so quickly and so completely that there is no experienced gap between stimulus and response. The body has simply become the mind, and the mind believes it is making free choices while following a program that was installed before it could think. But that gap can be widened. Not through force, through repetition of a different kind. The repetition of the pause, the repetition of the question, the repetition of the breath directed toward the body's stored geography of the script. This is not a spiritual practice in the conventional sense. It is a retraining of the nervous system's baseline, achieved through the same mechanism by which the original script was installed: repeated experience. You are not trying to think your way out of a biological addiction. You are giving the body a new experience, the experience of being met with awareness rather than obeyed without question. Helio Couto says that the frequency begins to shift at the moment the script is witnessed rather than executed. The moment the body's running program is seen, truly seen, with the quality of attention that is free from judgment and free from the urgency to immediately fix. The electromagnetic signature of that moment is different from the signature of a moment in which the script runs unseen. You do not have to become a different person today. You have to become the observer of the person you have been. That shift, from unconscious execution to witnessed recognition, is the biological precondition for the collapse of a new wave function into your material experience. Alan Watts closes with the lightness that has always been his particular gift to the carriage. He says that the work of this episode, the recognition of the script, the understanding of the biological addiction, the practice of somatic interruption, is not the grim labor of self-improvement. It is the delightful project of finally reading the book you have been living inside of. Most people spend their entire lives as characters in a story they never consciously chose, running lines from a script they never auditioned for, wondering why the plot never changes. The invitation of Phase 4 is not to escape the story. It is to finally hold the pen. Jordan Peterson says, "Hold the pen and use it." The recognition without the reconstruction is sentimentality. The compassion without the discipline is indulgence. You now know what the script is. You now understand how the body runs it. You now have a protocol that operates at the level where the script lives. What you do with that is the only question that matters. Begin, not perfectly, not completely, begin. Jung says, the only way out is inward. And inward is not a direction that leads away from your life. It is the direction that leads toward its author. Go in, find what the script is protecting, and offer it something better than suppression. Offer it integration. Offer it the safety that was not available when the script was written. The shadow that is seen is already half dissolved. Carl Rogers says, you are enough to do this work, not because you have demonstrated it yet, because the capacity is native to the instrument. The work is possible not despite who you are, because of who you are, including the parts you have not yet met, and the carriage moves. If this episode reconfigured your understanding of your nervous system, if you are leaving this chapter with a clearer map of the script that has been running your life and a practice for beginning to rewrite it at the level where it actually lives, share this with one person you know who is caught in a cycle of self-sabotage they cannot explain and cannot seem to exit. Check that your subscription is active. The next station in Phase 4 will take what we have named today and begin the architectural work of building a new frequency baseline, one that is not inherited, not imposed, not chemically required by the old script, but genuinely chosen. I am the Quantum Architect, and you did not find this here by accident.